This episode is brought to you by Struzy Golf. Hey coaches out there, what I'm about to share with you is for the 1% who are ready to finally take their business to the next level. If you're ready to grow and evolve as a business owner, keep listening. I'm a coach just like you. I want more time to invest in my players, build my skills, and spend it with my family. We also both struggle with the idea of taking time off and sacrificing revenue. Coaches like us need tools to save time, automate admin tasks, and deliver excellent player experiences every single time. What if I told you there is a platform that captures 37% net new revenue in the first 60 days? It only takes 5 minutes to set up, and a simple copy-paste puts the rest on autopilot. As a founder and CEO of your business, you would fire yourself for not taking advantage of this value. Download a Struzy right now and start the journey to modernizing your business. Oh, and when you create your account, don't forget to add an asterisk, that little star thing on your keyboard, to your last name so they know the guru sent you. If you aren't convinced just yet, keep listening to learn more. Now let's get back to the show.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. You're like a miniature Buddha covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1, no touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. I'm your host, Jason Sutton, and I am the Guru. I am also the Director of Instruction at the beautiful Colleton River Club in Bluffton, South Carolina, where it is my mission to break down high performers in the teaching and coaching business at all fields of study, unpack and tease out what makes them great and successful, daily habits, books they've read, best practices, and then how they operate with their students. Make sure that you download this episode and hit that purple subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes that will be coming your way. All I ask of you is that you share this podcast on social or with your friends or with other coaches and players that might benefit from the information. I have a couple of asks of you, just like last episode, if you don't mind. I am updating my website and have changed the domain to thegolfgurushow.com without the golfgurushow.com. Go on there and subscribe because I will be posting some content and also another avenue to get to the show if you so please. So please go and subscribe and it will get you on my email list and all future posts about the show as well as other coaching information. And if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, that would be awesome. Super helpful. Give me a 5-star review. See if we can run myself up the charts, which would be awesome. I'm very excited about this one as my guest is Dan Carraher, aka the Rain Man. Dan is the Director of Instruction at the Golf Club at Southampton in St. Augustine, Florida. Dan is a bit of a golf instruction prodigy as he's been coaching from a very early age, as he has been teaching and coaching since he was in college. And just out of college, started working with tour players immediately, which is kind of unheard of. But as you can find in this conversation, the kid is very, very smart. I'll say kid, he's older now, but super smart, super intelligent, and really cares about his players. He has had his PGA Tour credentials since the age of 24, which is pretty incredible. He's coached many great players over the years, spent time with so many great coaches, and now focuses his time coaching juniors and college players for the most part. Still a few tour players, of course. He is currently coaching the likes of Caitlin Schroeder, who is a freshman at Alabama and former #1 junior in the world before she went to college, since she was in middle school. And we talk a lot about his relationship with her and some of the things that they're working on, which is super cool. Dan doesn't do a whole lot of self-promotion, which is maybe why you haven't heard of him, unless you're in the inner teaching circles, which I met Dan several years ago, and we kind of talk about our first meeting early on in the combo. But his results and his reputation speaks for itself and deserves the credit for the work he's done over the years with so many great players, such as PGA Tour player Julian Surrey, where he kind of helped him get his card, and there's many others. This was an awesome conversation that is chock full of information, especially for the juniors out there and the coaches who are navigating the ever difficult recruiting process. So pay attention, because this guy is putting so many kids into college and is training them. And we talk about his training and how he does that with his competitive kids and the process that he goes about sort of creating pressure, which is something that I'm always real curious about. So without further delay, here is Dan Carraher. Enjoy. What's up, Dan Carraher? Welcome to the show, man. Great to see you.
Glad to be here. It's been a minute. Well, other than the PGA show, but other than before that, it's been a little while.
Yeah, we ran into each other at the PGA show. It was good to catch up. And I was excited to have you on because, again, sort of not under the radar, but like not a whole lot posted on social for you aside from your awesome Instagram. So I'm excited to dig into some like technical stuff.
Yeah, I try to, I won't say keep a low profile, but like I don't go out of my way to do any self-promotion or kind of.
No, I appreciate that. Like your students kind of do it all for you, right? I mean, it's like the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, and I have, I think, a different opinion as far as like social media and content goes, I think, than most people, and I don't expect anybody to have the same opinion, but I use it all the time. I tell people, I think instructional content on social media is like giving a hypochondriac to WebMD. Like, I think it does no good for anybody. So like, I pretty much don't put any instructional information out there because I feel like for the one person it's going to help, it's probably going to hurt 10.
Yeah.
It's not really what actually came up in a post recently on my feed where somebody got mad for me not explaining the drill that somebody was doing in the video. And I'm like, it's very purposeful that I'm not explaining it. Because the odds that you share the exact same problem, same root cause is pretty close to zero.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's like you just post, post a swing and post who it's about and then don't really give a whole lot of context, which I'm very similar to. Like I'll give a little blurb of like, hey, here's what we're working on. But yeah, it just opens up a can of worms of people, the trolls jumping in.
Yeah, and well, you know me a little bit, so like I'm not afraid to put someone in there. But like if someone, I always tell people, same thing I said in that post, is I'm going to give you the energy that you right back that you give me. So if you come in like trolling and I'm better at it, and it's like you can play that game, and it's probably not going to end well for you.
Yeah, you're one of the old school forum guys, right?
Yeah,
remember those days?
Yeah, it's pretty much dead. I occasionally post on GolfWorks still, but pretty much don't go anywhere other than the putter section and the junior section, because I think the bad information that's in the junior section is parents that don't have a clue trying to help. Like, and to me, I just want to add at least my life experience to kind of say, this is a reality of how this kind of works. It can prevent people from kind of going down the wrong rabbit hole. Or I think junior golf is kind of like weddings. I think there's a ton of people trying to separate families from their money.
Yeah, that's a good way to
probably
put it.
Try to overcoach and overcharge for almost everything, and kind of high frequency, high dollar. Same thing too. Some people, if I want to be rich, I just start a junior tour because it's basically a mini tour, but you don't have to pay out any prize money. So
yeah,
the guys I know that own junior tours live in some very nice houses.
Yeah, AJGA, right? It's like kind of have to do it. But it's like, yep.
We're lucky here that I tell a lot of my kids, like, if you want to stay in state, and I have pretty good connections with most of the coaches in state, that they don't have to play any of it.
Right. Well, you're in Florida, so it's kind of that helps, right? You're in one of the big five.
Yeah, especially for boys. Like if you win multiple FJTs or even one FJT, like you're going to, like one of my kids won an FJT at 15. Hadn't done a ton before that and has done okay after that. But like as soon as he won, contact from like Illinois, contact like the schools that you wouldn't think would necessarily be paying attention to the local slash state run junior golf tour. But I would argue that a lot of the kind of Midwest Opens on AJGA, so non-invitationals and like elite, basically you need to be fully exempt to even think about getting in. All your just regular middle of the year kind of Opens, I would argue, are no stronger than the like exempt Florida stuff. And I teach in an area that's probably a little less crazy affluent across the board. There's money, but it's not South Florida. Like, we're really close to Georgia. So there's more kind of blue collar kids that can't really afford to travel the country, or even playing like 1 or 2 in-state tournaments a month is a lot for most of them.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we kind of table that for a little bit, because I want to get into a lot of your juniors and college kids and how you train them. But I want to take you back. We were just talking a little bit before we started recording. Like, when we first met back in, I kind of did the math. I think it was like 2010. Does that sound about right? It was like the first tweet up, right? This tells you how long ago it was. John Graham and myself put together what we called a tweet up, which was like everybody on Twitter, golf professionals, hey, let's meet at Miller's Ale House. And we had a pretty good kind of showing, like 25 guys came through, right? And then I met you. I think that's where I met TJ. Claude Harmon was there.
Some pretty, I would say, people that were probably very under the radar then, but have turned out to be impactful in the golf business.
Definitely.
And I don't even think I had Twitter then. I think that was just like the...
How'd you even find out about it, right?
I'm pretty sure it was like John Graham or somebody from that also posted on forums and whatnot, said I could come.
Yeah, for sure. And I just remember this little kid in a hoodie and a hat. Looked like you're about 12. I think you're probably 22, 23 or something like that. And I think you and TJ had just gotten back from Mac school. Does that sound about right?
So I've actually never been to a Mac school. Oh. I'm very Mac adjacent.
Yeah, okay.
I was kind of out before I was in.
I was going to ask you when you got kicked out. I thought you were in there.
No, from what I've been told, like, he definitely knows who I am. And I think I'm too big of an acquaintance with too many people that have been kicked out to ever be allowed. But you come from a golfing machine background, so like,
for sure.
I mean, and I know enough people that have, I would say, talked enough, and there's enough stuff out there that nowadays you can't really keep things under wraps. That the pattern and what he's done has evolved so much, even in the last 10 years versus what it was in like the 90s and 2000s. It's kind of what vintage Mac do you really want to look at, as far as his teaching style is going to vary drastically depending on what decade you choose.
Yeah. Yeah, just saying, Doherty was there, John Doherty, mutual friend. Because those guys were deep into it at that point. I think we were staying together, and we stayed together at 4, 5, 6 PGA shows. And as we've talked about on the podcast a few times with some of the guys that were there, some epic condo discussions were had.
Yeah, Doc used to call me, I'm sure after my, like, that was pre-marriage and where I could be up super late at night talking on the phone from somebody in Tennessee. But yeah, there was plenty of very late night conversations that probably went way too late, lasted way too long. So educational all the way around.
Oh, for sure. So I think when we were introduced, somebody said, yeah, that's Rain Man. When's the last time you've been called Rain Man? And give me the backstory of why you were nicknamed Rain Man.
There's some people that still definitely call me that, or some Rain Dan has been
it's evolved.
Something that's been said. I mean, I think it probably just came from people probably being slightly uncomfortable. Like, I'm a fairly smart guy. I'm kind of entered the golf business at I would say an extremely young age compared to most people. And then I tend to look younger than I am. So I think even years before I met you, I was teaching tour players that were twice my age. And that always had I think in the beginning there was a lot of kind of reluctance to be seen because it looked like a high schooler was teaching somebody on tour, and then when people start playing well, it doesn't really matter. Like all
That's
that kind
right.
of goes out the window. But I think it kind of I was a kid that had an answer for every question, or at least tried to. And so it just became some people would call, and that became the quick nickname, I guess. That I think it was Bob Townsend that probably started it. Who's buddies with Doherty, and then I think that's kind of how it
Yeah, I think
telephone gamed its way across the
yeah.
internet and the world.
Because I remember when we first met. It's funny, it shows you how, like, stuff that I remember back in the day. It's like, I think I asked you that question, like, why do they call you Rain Man? It's like you said, because I can hit all the patterns.
You can do a lot of. I'm pretty.
Your swing is so dirty, dude. Like, I want to get into like how it evolved, but in your career, but yeah, it was so
a little bit.
Yeah.
I've always felt like, I mean, to me, like how I know anything about golf, instruction came from me as a kid. We grew up. Don't want to be disrespectful, so I'm not going to say poor, but did not have money for golf lessons. Barely had money for golf, so I was a kid that went to the library and checked out the maximum number of books that were allowable at any given time, and then would return them and check out more. So I'm pretty sure I read every golf book that was available at the public library, starting from a very young age. And then was a pretty decent skateboarder. And so I had a video camera when I think not a lot of people had video cameras, like when that wasn't a super common thing at a pretty young age. There wasn't many 12-year-olds running around with relatively high-end video equipment. But like I'm sure there's somewhere, who knows where the tapes are, but
Like to see the skateboard videos.
Those still are around, but I have some high 8 or mini DV video of me like swinging in the backyard at like 10, 11, 12. Like I would literally hit balls over, well, statute of limitations has long since expired, but we live near a golf course, which is now Atlantic Beach Country Club. And so I would hit golf balls over the house across the street, basically onto property that was, 200 yards on the other side of their property.
Who got you interested in the game? Like, if was that like your first? I mean, obviously skateboarding, and then, but like in other sports weren't involved. Like, who did you have somebody that got you into it?
Kinda. So no one in my family really, what I would consider, played golf. Like my grandfather definitely dabbled in golf and liked golf, but like I would say me playing golf got him to the golf course way more. Like I'm not really sure how much he golfed by the time I started golfing without me. Like I think that kind of became the reason he golfed. But for some reason there was like a plastic club probably when I was like 3 or 4 years old. And I know that I was hitting like fake balls in the house, and it didn't take long before stuff started breaking. And they realized like, one, this can't happen at the house, and two, like we have to actually like find a way, get clubs and like go to a drive. Like it has to be a outdoor official activity relatively quickly. But growing up, I played every sport imaginable. I would actually say that until genetics ruled me out of a lot of sports, golf was probably the sport I was the worst at until probably I was like 14 or 15.
What was your best?
The one I didn't probably stick with it long enough, but I was probably the best at was hockey. Probably.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then baseball, I was quite good. Like we made it to the state championships of the Babe Ruth World Championships, and we're a pretty untraveled baseball team with a bunch of guys that ended up playing for a living. So like was decent at all of those, but I probably entered high school at 4'10". So baseball became really, most of the stuff other than golf and skateboarding became, even if I was good enough, you were kind of overlooked. Like you were typecasted, and it kind of, writing was on the wall that not a great opportunity. I didn't really like soccer. That was probably another one I could have been okay with, but no interest to me. And so golf, I got good at golf as soon as I cared to be really good at golf, kind of. Like golf was just the thing I played in the summer with my grandfather, and then it still interested me. And then like, I would say 7th grade, started taking it a little more seriously. But it was still, I was in a junior program that was 35 minutes across town, and single mom. It basically was like a 1 or 2 weekend a month kind of thing. Like, wasn't something I could do real until we moved when I was in middle school,
You grew up where?
Jacksonville area.
Okay. So it's similar where you're at. Gotcha.
Yeah, so grew up where I was in much closer to the junior program at Jack's Beach, which is now way more famous than it was when I was a kid because they've redone it and the no laying up guys like to talk about it. But it was it was a muni that as a junior I got to play for, I believe it was $4 unlimited golf. And that's why we would drive across town to go there. And then we moved a couple miles away from there. And then it became, I could go there and then I got a job there in high school. And then it became, I was there pretty much anytime I was not at school. And even sometimes I was probably supposed to be in school.
So that's when you sort of, the ignition happened and you started getting better. Like, 'cause I know you got pretty good pretty quick.
Yeah, kind of. I think I had an experience that a lot of people do. Like, I think improvement is generally not nonlinear. And I think what never got me, I always worked at it, but I would never got good. I'll get frustrated. Like, I would put in this work and it's kind of the long-term gains would have been there, but there wasn't enough short-term satisfaction to kind of until it became, I'm going to figure this out because there's nothing else really. Like, I was ultra competitive and always played sports. So it was like, it probably also hooked me that it was the thing that wasn't easy to figure out. Like, it wasn't like I was instantly like all-star, whatever. It took a while for me to kind of, pure athletic ability wasn't enough to kind of be good.
Yeah. You needed information and some coaching, and
I've actually never really taken a golf lesson.
Yeah, that's what I know. I was like, and that probably led you to your curiosity of how all the stuff worked, right?
Yeah, I definitely filmed everything, read everything, tried. But like, about my golf swing, kind of how it's moved is, I don't believe on kind of experimenting on students. So I always kind of experimented on myself. Like, it was always, and so my opinion is, like, if you truly understand something, you should be able to demonstrate it. And if you can't, you probably don't understand it at a high enough level to teach it. You might understand it, like you could pass a test on it, but there's a difference being able to pass a calculus test and standing in the front of the classroom and teaching calculus. I know not all great teachers are great players, and I don't think you even have to necessarily be a great player from a scoring perspective, but I think if you're talking about how the body moves, you're trying to tell someone how to get there, I think you should probably be able to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think you got to be able to at least demonstrate to a level to show some expertise. I mean, yeah, it's something that actually I've just had Humar on the podcast and talked to some of my colleagues and friends, and we've talked about that, like the level of understanding, I think, nowadays from the coaching industry is probably lacking compared to like the knowledge that people are collecting. Does that make sense? It's like all the certifications and all the information that's out there. It's like, yeah, I can sort of regurgitate some things to people, but the level of understanding is probably not there. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. I think, I'm not going to put any names out there, but recently had,
come on.
I would say I had a student that is not the only coach he works with. Like, he kind of talks to everybody, but he got a text message from a coach explaining what he would work on, and he shared it to me, and it might as well have been things like, I would guess 95% of teaching pros wouldn't understand 90% of what this text said, and he definitely didn't. And he was like, it sounds like he's just using big words to try to sound smart.
Yeah.
I countered a little bit because I think that's how it comes across. So I think coaches have to be careful about using, I would say, biology or anatomy terms, and especially very often misusing them. And the reason for that is most of the people you're talking to aren't going to know what you're saying.
Yeah, you got to know your audience. Your
and
student,
then the problem is when you run across the person that does and you say it wrong, you lose all credibility.
Great point.
And so to me, like, the best class I ever took in college, and most of college was a waste on me. Not that it's a waste on everybody. but I was a engineering major, and one of the
Right.
classes I had to take was called Fundamentals of Technical Presentation. The teacher was a retired radio host, so had been in media her whole life, knew how to speak, knew nothing technical, like very simple. And you were given very complex subjects, and you had to do a presentation, and they varied in length depending on which topic and whatever. But it was, if you went 1 second over, it was an automatic F.
Really?
And then your grade was based on how well she understood what you were presenting at the end of it. So, like, for instance, I had to do a 10-minute presentation on the internal combustion engine and explain how an engine works in under 10 minutes at a high enough level to where someone who knows nothing about engines could understand it.
It sounds like a good teaching exercise.
That's why I said I think it's the best class I had to take.
That's cool.
Extremely frustrated in the class.
How'd you do with that on the presentation?
All right. Like, I think I got either a B plus or an A minus in the class, but I think was way above average for, like, that class was one that, like, very intelligent people got C's in, because, like, it was almost like you have to prove how smart you are by treating me like I'm a 5-year-old and making sure that, like, you can, if you truly understand it, you can explain it in the most layman's terms possible. But, like, you didn't get any credit for sounding smart. And I think
that's pretty deep.
Golf needs more of that. And I think when I got into teaching, I almost immediately started teaching, like, elite level players. Like, that was pretty much.
So how did that happen? Like, paint a picture of, like, your first job, and, like, how does that scenario even come about?
Yeah, so even in high school, I kind of helped a lot of kids on the team. Like, it just became, people knew that I read a lot and that I do a lot, and I was always filmed. Like, so, like, if someone had a question, they would ask, and then I turned pro way too early. It wasn't good enough, but I tried to play. And people that I was playing against that I would say were underachieving started asking questions. And I basically said that, like, if I have to take time away from what I'm doing to help you, it's going to cost you. And that's kind of how things started.
Yeah, that's a good way to get tour players.
Very unofficial. Like, and it was very, this area is pretty ridiculous as far as golf, as far as historical, like, junior golf, amateur golf, and the money games that used to be out at Jack's Beach when I was a kid were, I would say, absurd at times. But that's where a lot of it, like, good amateurs, and kind of, like, at one point, well, I got asked to leave and not allowed to play anymore, but they did this skins game that was, you got paid front 9 and overall, and then skins. And they didn't factor in the fact that 1/9's easier than the other. So they just split the points evenly on both sides. And I never won the overall, but I won the same side 14 weeks in a row. And that became a problem because they thought it was some kind of sandbagging or whatever. It was just kind of like front 9 significantly easier than the back. And so it'd be like, I'd have to pull 42 points or something, and I would pull exactly 42 points. It would be like 31-37. And so the points total would not move, but I kept winning because I would win a side and maybe a skin. And this is in, like, 100 plus people. So, like, you're talking sometimes 4 figures. Like, the numbers got pretty big for a young kid. Like, but most of the time it was like several $100s for an afternoon of 18 holes.
That's pretty good for, yeah, like that time.
Yeah, that was good for me. Like, that was
absolutely.
That's why I got asked to leave. It was enough money to. But, like, a lot of the guys that I played against ended up, like, those were some of the first students I had. I actually had trouble getting hired most places. I actually interviewed at the Tour Academy and was told in the interview that I was the, like, most overqualified, knowledgeable person they've had for an entry-level position, but I looked too young.
Oh, boy. Is that still there?
One I did, yes, because it was at World Golf Village. It was before the one at TPC had opened, and I was basically interviewing in, I think that was like 05 or 06 for when the one at TPC was, basically the plan was I was trying to get my foot in the door before that one opened So
Yeah, I remember that. Who was the director of instruction? I can't remember at that time.
Travis Fulton.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so it's Travis. Gotcha. Okay. All right. So moving on, like, how did you ever get
I will say
employed?
he was not the one I interviewed. I ended up working for Golf Tech because they would hire me.
Who were some of those early players that you started working with?
Yeah, a couple, like mainly Hooters Tour players, and then some decent juniors in the Central Florida area. And then working at Golf Tech, so I kind of taught both extremes. I taught players at an elite level, and then a lot of the people that class of fundamentals of technical presentation helped a lot. Kind of 25 to 30 handicaps that at Golf Tech, especially at that time when you're talking, like we had a launch monitor, which a lot of places didn't. You're talking about early days of 3D, like a bunch of numbers people are seeing that most golf pros don't know what they're looking at, let alone consumer. And I think it was a good environment because I taught a lot of lessons in a very short period of time and did well because I understood the technology and the relationships. Like a lot of it is, most of the golf swing is pattern recognition. And to me, like puzzles, like that's probably where the Rain Man thing cut, like pretty good at looking at something pretty quickly and figuring it out.
So was there a mentor behind that pattern recognition piece, or any influences aside from books? But it sounded like more videos, and like how did you come about like that piece of it?
Yeah, and just reading everything and taking some of what I thought was good from what someone said and throwing out anything that wasn't. And then a lot of the best part about the Golf Tech in 3D is like, I think the funny thing is the tour averages, and you can see it with who they currently, in the patterns they kind of push people to, but they didn't know how to read their own numbers for the most part, I would say. But if I wasn't teaching on a break, I wasn't walking the floor trying to sell because I'm not a good salesman. I would strap myself in and hit shots and start fooling around and kind of doing. And so like, I'm sure now they understand it, but it's essentially like understanding that forward bend and shoulder tilt at the top, meaning shoulders were turning perpendicular to the spine. But like the fact that they didn't explain that to coaches, or that forward bend in their numbers went from 36 degrees to basically right around 0. But if you taught a centered pivot, you were bad because they were teaching the move off the ball. Like what they were trying to explain in the video did not match the numbers that their own data supported at the time.
Interesting. Yeah. Right. Did you have any stack and tilt background at all? Like, or is it?
Yeah, I've been to.
I felt like you. Yeah, I feel like you had a little bit.
Yeah, I got nice enough to be invited to a couple schools with. We definitely have some of the Mac adjacency that I'm definitely always going to be guilty by association. That's actually where I met Doherty, and that was super early, like mid 2000s, and I started reading Golf Machine at like 12, so a lot of it was in there.
That's insane.
Same thing I say about Mac, like it's all in there. But yeah, like to me, the more beneficial, like I didn't go to no school that I go to was I really like, I'm getting taught like my golf swing. Like I just sat and watched Mike and Andy and filmed more of like what they were teaching than anything on myself. And so to me, like same thing as like I helped out at Core and Foley not long after that. The same thing. Like
definitely more down that road for sure. Those days it seemed like too when he was. So it was about when he started teaching Tiger, right?
Yeah,
or just before.
Around then.
I thought you were.
Yeah, and like I got there because TrackMan was relatively new at that time, and I'd been using Radar since 2005, and so I knew it better than most. And he's not here anymore, but I knew Ryan Corbin, who was one of Sean, almost like Sean's little brother or second dad, and Ryan introduced us, and Sean liked that I knew a lot about the things that he wanted to know more about. So
were you still employed with Golf Tech, or did you go like work?
No, that was
for him.
So I actually
give me the lineage. I know it's tough to like not jump around. But.
So yeah, I worked for Golf Tech till I believe it was early 2009, and then I moved to San Diego. So I'd met Townsend, who I think started the whole Rain Man thing, at the one school with Andy and Mike. And he was bugging me for at least 6 months of when you're going to come out here and like, we'll pay you and you need to basically educate us. And I kind of figured at that time that as someone who grew up in Florida, and my whole family's from the Midwest, so I spent summers in Minnesota most of my life growing up, but like never really been to the West Coast, is that if I didn't do it then, it was probably never going to happen. So I kind of made the decision that I had no responsibility, so might as well go for it. So went there, was there for like a little over a year and realized how expensive things were very quickly, and realized that I was doing golf schools kind of all over the country, so I would essentially be there, but then book something and go travel. And I realized real quickly that no matter where I went, I could kind of charge Southern California money at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I could move back home where cost of living is infinitely cheaper and still charge the same amount of money. And so I did that. So I was living in Jacksonville, teaching a little bit at Jack's Beach on the side is kind of, I would say, my history there was kind of like, don't make it obvious that you're giving golf lessons, so we won't stand in the way. But I couldn't like advertise or anything. And then I started teaching like 2 or 3 days a week down at Orange County National in Orlando with the whole Sean scenario. And so basically I would book where I would sun up to sundown 3 days in a row. Would a lot of times stay with Ryan or just book a hotel and beach and then come home. And then I was doing probably like 5 or 6 golf schools a year, where like I do a 2 or 3 day golf school by myself with a couple other people. Figured out real quick I don't like doing those.
Big group sessions, like just average golfers or like good players?
Yeah. It was like a lot of the forum crowd. So like high golf IQ. It's a way to maximize profit for sure. Because that's why people do group coaching, period.
Right.
But my attitude, I felt like nobody got their money's worth. My attitude was always that it was someone come to see me, still to this day, like if I were to do a golf school, someone could come to see me for probably a half day or 2 half days for the same one-on-one for the same price I would be charging to make it worthwhile to do a golf school. And that would be more at like a 6 to 8 to 1 ratio. And it just never made sense. Like it made sense financially. It never made sense from like ethics. I didn't feel like I was doing best for everyone involved. Yeah,
it's tough to spread enough to that bigger group.
Yeah, I think. And I know people do it.
Yeah.
I have friends that do a lot of that, and they're very funny. I think for the certain type of person, it probably worked very well. I've definitely been more accused of being on the technical side and would rather, it takes time. Like I'm not going to leave a person until I feel like they have it. And so what happens is I definitely play favorites, still do, even with juniors. It's usually the opposite of what most people think, is my favorites aren't usually the best. My favorites are usually the ones that need the most attention. Just because I think that they value-wise, that if I don't want to leave someone not getting it. So like there's a group of kids and they're like the weakest link's generally going to get the most attention.
At your club right now? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So the after school program where the volume of juniors fluctuates, but it basically includes, and my big thing is it always has to include one-on-one time. So like it includes one-on-one lessons and a group dynamic for the kind of, so I want them to be competitive. So there's a lot of, let's say, some gambling, usually a lot of trash talk. They definitely don't want to lose. And I think that competitive environment is really good for kids. So I use the group dynamic more of the supervised practice, but way more for the competitive element than I do for the actual instruction. That's usually done mainly in the one-on-one.
So tell the listeners where you're currently at now, what you're talking about, and then let's talk about how you train your kids, because I think that's a great intro.
Yeah, I'm at the golf club at Southampton. It's right on the Jacksonville-St. Augustine border, so pretty much across the street back in those neighborhoods is essentially Jacksonville. So it's kind of technically St. Augustine, but it's barely St. Augustine.
Gotcha. How long have you been there?
Almost 7 years now. I think that zip code's been one of the fastest growing zip codes in the U.S. for like a decade straight, and COVID didn't make it better.
Private facility, or is it open like to the public? Or?
Semi-private, so there's essentially, it's a dual-sided driving range. Well, there's 3 basic driving ranges. There's a public tee with their entire own short game area, and then my tee box is probably every bit as big as most driving ranges total, and then there's a member area, an entire short game area in the back. That probably the best short game. Well, the overall range, even the public side, probably the best public practice facility anywhere in the area. And then the backside is definitely, other than TPC, is probably the best practice facility and short game area.
Yeah. You got a training building, looks like, right? Facility that you're working out of.
Yeah, I have. That was a struggle to get. Now less so, apparently. So it's kind of like the field of dreams. Is I taught all over Jacksonville for over a decade, basically telling anybody that would listen, like, I'm willing to pay for the building, do whatever. Like, I just want what I want. Like, it has nothing to do with money. I'm willing to fund it all. After 9 years, they were the one that would let me put it up. I still had to fund, like, it's all out of my own pocket.
Really?
And now, of course, a bunch of places are building it. Like, they have to, it's like they're keeping up with the Joneses, yet I'm sure those course owners and or members would be disappointed to find out that I'm the one that paid to build it, as opposed to
that's crazy.
They're probably funding all of it for.
Wow. All right, we need to talk about that off air. That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
What do you got in the building? Describe the building.
We're still trying to fund it.
How big is it?
It's not huge. It is, I have to do the math, but I think it's like between 600 and 700 square feet.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good size. Couple bays.
1 bay, but it's deep, so that and then I have a putting room, a separate kind of side room that has Sam and putting area that might slowly be turning into like the machine shop. But
I was going to say, we're going to talk about you building and designing putters here in a minute too, but let's talk about some of your players. You worked with so many good players, and we can dig into your technology and how you train them. But start with Caitlin Schroeder. Talk about when you first met, and you can explain who she is for those of you that have been under a rock and don't know who she is. But like, give us like as much as you can, a detailed sort of path that you took her on from an early age to now she's in college at Alabama.
Yeah, so I've actually known her dad. So her dad is the golf coach at UNF. When I was in high school golf, he had I think it was probably his first or second year as an assistant was my recruiting class. So I've known him for a very long time. We won't do the math on that one, but longer than 2 decades. And so like I knew, before I started teaching Caitlin, I knew who she was, like being back in this area. And she had seen two other people before me. And when I got her, she was probably around 12. Like it was somewhere in middle school.
Yeah.
Maybe 13. Yeah. Very raw. So the benefit with Caitlin is she's always been able, even when she was just picking up golf, like when dad's a big influence, that she knows how to play golf. Like scoring was maybe a little more erratic than she wanted, but pretty good really quickly with a golf swing that probably made Lexi look like Robert Ross. And still has some of that. It's gotten way cleaner. But my big rule, especially with a player like that is really good at the, many people would call intangibles. I think they're pretty tangible, but
what would those be?
Good head on her shoulders. So she has speed. She's definitely athletic. She's just understood the game of golf. So even when she wasn't playing, she played other sports and kind of, I think, rebelled against dad for a little while. Sure. But she'd been around golf her whole life. Dad was a good player, was one of the top college golf coaches in the country. And so like, even before she played, she had an understanding around golf. And then I think the other benefit is that even the whole time we were working about like that peer to peer kind of thing, she was practicing with the men's college golf team at 12 years old. So her attitude was never, I want to be the best girl. Like it was she's around those guys all the time. So it was kind of like, I want to beat them. So like when it comes time to like chipping and putting contest, it's against like all American D1 golfers, not other girls that are 12 years old.
Wow. So the environment definitely shaped some of that.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's the only reason I do any group stuff is I think Gladwell pointed it out, and I think a bunch of others have kind of pointed out is that you can create a group dynamic. That's what it's good for, is that the skateboarder, but one of the most intelligent guys is Rodney Mullen, and he's done a bunch of TED Talks, and he'll talk about how he'll do a trick and somebody in some country who's not even that good will be able to do it in like 6 weeks, and it took him years to. And he's like, someone's like, he did that because of you, and he's like, he didn't do it. I didn't teach him how to do it. I just showed him that it was possible.
Leader of the pack syndrome.
I think a group environment. Yeah. So I think a group environment where someone sees like, you can be this good, or this is what what the bar is. So like a lot of kids in Florida, people are like, why is golf good in Florida? Especially in this area, like Miles Russell's from Jacksonville. I have zero to do with that. Ramon has done a great job with Miles, but like even just having Miles in town, if kids go, if you're a high school golfer, more specifically, even a freshman high school golfer, the best freshman in Jacksonville is the number one junior in the country. And so, and for any class, like he's already the best golfer in the country in ninth grade. And
is he related to Ryan?
Short of I don't know. I know who he is, and I think I met him once. Like super talented kid. And then I think Phil Dunham. Like we have a bunch of kids that are top 100 in the world, but I think it kind of success breeds success. So like even if they fall short, they're still going to be top 100. Like their definition of what good is skewed. Where like if you live in the Midwest, it's really easy to be the big fish in the little pond and think you're amazing, and you don't really realize what good really looks like. And I think kids from this area are probably a little more ready for national level competition just because the local competition is hard.
Yeah,
and I try to cram as many of those kids onto our property as possible. Like I invite kids that I don't teach. So when we're doing up and down stuff, if there's a kid that I know that works with someone else that is a good kid, like is not going to be bad to bring into it. It's like, dude, come over here. Like show this 14-year-old who thinks he's really good what good actually looks like. Like let's humble some 8th graders.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of my friend Chris Trevino that has an academy in Reno, and he kind of deals with the kids like that. Same.
Chris tried.
You know Chris, right? He used to work with Doc.
Me and Chris know each other. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris tried to. There was a time where I was considering moving to Reno to help him with all of that. But very similar. That's why I think even also playing well. I don't really practice much, but I do just enough to stay good enough to humble most of the kids. And so I always tell them, like, I wasn't good enough. If me not practicing and not even trying is better than you, then you don't get a chance. Like, you definitely have to step this up.
I love it. The quieter Chris Trevino is what
that seems to
more.
Yeah, Chris probably had a better playing career than I did, but he also stuck with it way longer. Very quickly realized that what my ceiling probably was. Realized I very quickly what my ceiling with golf instruction was probably much higher, considering he had PGA Tour teaching credentials at 24. So that was a no-brainer to this is probably the path you should. I didn't want to be Crash Davis. I didn't want to be 40 years old and have say I played 2 seasons on the Korn Ferry Tour, missed more cuts than I made, and have a bunch of good stories, but meaningless.
I hear you. Nice Bull Durham reference. Love it. This episode of the Golf Guru Show is brought to you by our new partners, Astruzi. Listen up, coaches. What I'm about to share is different than what you've come to expect from the guru. Normally, I'm the one asking the perfect questions to tease out the secrets, tips, and lessons learned from the best and brightest in our industry has to offer. This time around, I want to share some perspective. You know you're a business owner, right? You're a solopreneur. You're the founder, CEO, admin, sales, and marketing department. Like you, I often daydream about a world where these no longer consume our valuable time and energy. All of this takes us away from high value time in the lab developing our players. If some days you feel like Bill Murray from Groundhog Day and your business is slowly sending you into an early grave, well, thankfully, I can say from personal experience, relief is only 5 minutes away. And I know you have 5 minutes. Coaches, if you have a Gmail account, an iPhone or an iPad, have your own LLC, constantly switch between 4 to 5 different services to run your business, charge at least $70 per lesson, or deliver at least 15 hours of lessons per week, then pay close attention because I'm talking directly to you. Estruzi is a business management platform where you finally offload all those wasted hours in admin tasks and get back to doing what we love, coaching your players, nerding out on ball flight laws, and about a million other things you would prefer more. If your business would benefit from 37% net new revenue, Estruzi is for you. If you struggle to build accountability with your players and dream of staggering 71.4% swing analysis viewer rate, Estruzi is for you. If you want a platform that protects and amplifies the decades of experience instead of allowing players to window shop 5 different coaches only to choose the cheapest one or the cheapest option, Estruzi is for you. If you have no idea where to begin, Estruzi is for you. I personally have an account and can vouch for the value that Estruzi delivers. The download link is in the show notes, or head to estruzi.com to download the app. When you create your account, don't forget to add an asterisk to your last name so they know that the guru sent you. Go to estruzi.com today. So continue with Caitlin. Like, what do you?
Yeah. So for her, we started short game. It was all like what she could hit it pretty far. Started wedges and a lot of basic stuff. So like, and it's something I've learned with a couple good players is golf IQ is not super high. We're working on that. But a lot of players that are super special from a awareness and athletic perception, like they can do things that they don't even realize that they're doing. Because they're good, no one's explained things that are basic. So things that you would think a player who is already that good would have to know, that she absolutely, something like we want a wedge swing to be remotely symmetrical, at least in the ballpark, not a quarter of the way back in full follow through, or not a full back swing with no follow through. I thought that was pretty self-explanatory, but apparently some people don't know that. And then golf swing wise, it's really been for her, both golf swing and gym wise. She works hard in the gym to try and correct kind of weaknesses and flexibility issues. It's been stabilizing her legs. Like I said, like if you watch her hit an iron, it looks really good.
Yeah,
like
I've watched
really
some of her
right
videos.
Now. And if you watch her hit her driver, if you watch her hit a driver, it still looks a little Lexi. Like she'll step out of a few. But she's also, especially in women's golf, distance is such an advantage that hitting a driver 275, 280 isn't enough of an advantage and she hits enough fairways that it's not really a death move.
When did you know she was going to be as good as she is now? So was she a sophomore at Alabama?
Actually, she's a freshman. So she did the
freshman. Okay.
Yeah, she graduated high school early. So she did the early enrollment January. So technically she's a redshirt freshman, but she did one semester, 17 years old. Just get on campus and get comfortable and acclimated. But this was her first year of actually playing. But prior to that, she was the number 1 junior in the world and won the junior PGA and the Rolex and played in the ANWA. So decent resume.
I would say so.
Yeah, like I knew from basically the moment, even before I started teaching her, she was special. Just because of she's lucky, the environment that she was in, and she has physical traits. You know, she's taller, stronger than a lot of other girls that made things, I wouldn't say easier because she works her butt off, but helped move things along quicker than most. And then she also there's very few alpha females and girls that are hyper competitive. There's other super talented girls that like don't even like competition. Like they're doing it to get a scholarship or they're doing it and from day one, she wanted to like embarrass the boys. Like that was, so to me, like that, she had the attitude. And I think with girls golf, I think that's a massive part of it. With boys,
killer instinct,
inherent. Yeah, and just wanting to win. I wouldn't say at all costs, but at almost all costs. Like winning is almost everything. And then the thing that I knew was special, like she was always good, but was probably actually that junior PGA win. She was not playing well, and I might have got a panic text like early in the week of that event, like it wasn't going well. Touched on very simple things that we've done previously. So never going to give anything new the week of a tournament. And I forgot what she won by. It might have been double digits. It was quite a bit. And so she turned a week that wasn't very good starting out and like emotional about it not being good starting out to comfortably winning. That's when I was like, you can win. Made Tiger specials. You can win even when it's not your absolute best. You can find a way to kind of make this work. To me, when I saw that the mental toughness that took, that was where like Matthew just needs experience. Like that's
yeah. Can you share any of the, like the technical stuff that you've done with her golf swing, or like what are her tendencies? Kind of interesting to see as she goes along in her career, and obviously probably turn pro.
Yeah, probably. It's probably more of a question of win rather than
exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
But yeah, her old golf swing was very kind of little Nancy Lopez, like hands out, club it, like very
totally different now, right?
What you see with her pattern actually is an exaggerated version of mine. I love it because it's very old school. So now we've gone to correct the problem. We went the opposite direction. So hands are pretty deep, pretty early. Clubs more vertical, and then arms work out. So it's kind of in and over, but club lays down a ton, and it ends up being the path is very neutral, pretty neutral.
So what's her stock shot?
Driver, likes to fade it with driver and probably draw a short irons. So B plane stuff, but fairly. So our goal is to get swing direction pretty much zero, like pretty neutral. Driver, because of her intent and speed, like she definitely hits way, like picks up on it. So pass left considerably.
Irons are more like 2 to 4 club path to the right ish.
Yeah.
With a zero swing direction.
Yeah, and she hits it nearly as far as I do.
How's that feel?
I think the funny thing is, like, I don't have the Napoleon syndrome, like, because, like, I've always been short. Like, I'm actually the longest I've probably been since maybe the second year playing professional golf, but, like,
oh, wow.
I'm almost as long now as I was then, and, like, I'm still not long. Like, I don't think, like, if I rip at one, I think I posted the other day, it's like 115. But I tell people, like, I'm 5'7", maybe 5'7.5" on a good day, and like out of shape and don't practice. So like it's more that I do just fine with what I got.
Yeah. Did she do any speed training at all, or is it just was she naturally just progressively got faster as she got stronger?
We've done some speed work. The problem with kids in general and anybody actually is like speed training, if done wrong, is high risk. I think most people don't tend to rest long enough between sessions, and I think you end up with injuries. So to me, it's balancing that stuff in the gym. She's had a trainer since she was will probably correct me, but 14-ish, 15-ish.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's constantly like she's gotten more and more dedicated to that over time. And it's kind of like it's the same thing to me with her lower body is the more stable it gets, it'll make her better. But we're trying to move it 1% better every single day. It's not
better. Better would be what? Tomorrow. Is it more like what's the pivot like in your opinion for her? What does it look like?
She can get in the positions I can only like her rotator cuff flexibility is off the charts. So like she can get the club even if she's way open lower body wise. She's almost too much separation to where she can't catch up, and then almost too much external rotation in the trail shoulder to where. And so the stepping out of it is her way to get the path left, like to hit the shot that she wants to hit. Is that if it's trailing so much, it's her way to kick it around. Like it's an additional force to kind of get everything working around.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Which is why it's fixing the other stuff before we fix, that's the thing that's saving her. So I'm not going to purposely do that until the club's in a position to where she doesn't have to do it.
Which is what are the backswing pieces you mentioned, like hands in, a little more depth early, club a little more upright and online at the top, club, from what I've seen in her videos.
Yeah, less arm. So for her, it's feeling like hands get deep with minimal arm rotation. So she's kind of most of the depth comes by like hip high.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're using max stuff like P2.5.
Right.
And then the right arm just folds vertically. So like there's almost no depth gain from hip high to the top of the backswing.
Right. Then there's a little bit more arm lift from there to get it to the top.
Yeah, it's very Sneed-esque.
Gotcha.
And like that's somewhat purposeful, but more so like it's applying to her. Like it's what she'd always kind of had that out move, the shifted out move, and thought it was bad. And I'm like, if we get the club center mass following enough behind, it doesn't matter. Like you're going to kick it around, like it's going to be fine. And I think it's a dangerous golf swing that a lot of people probably don't understand that move. So the argument on social media with the one kid that posted the other day is it's the same thing. They're like, that's over the top. It's like, dude, his path is 6+ from out. Like it's not over the top of. People don't understand the depth early and when the arms work out with the shaft and flatten. It's like Carl Pedersen hitting draws. Like people can't wrap their head around a guy who's has that much out in transition.
It's like my guy Will McGirt. I don't know if you've seen his swing. It's the same. It's very similar to Pedersen.
Yeah. Cleaner version of that, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as long as they can control the sweet spot, that's probably your only challenge is like when the hands get that far away from the body. And clearly she can do that.
Yeah. Like it went from, I always tell people the evolution of her golf swing became, that's a good golf swing for Caitlin, to that's a really good golf swing for a girl. And now there's, like, you get face on or down the line with an iron. There's no qualifier. There's just, that's a good golf swing.
Yeah.
Long term, I want the driver to match that, but it's not that, like it's a constant gradual. The whole, for her, thankfully with her dad and the input, like it's always been about the long game. It's always been about how good she's going to be at 20, 25, 30. Like it's been about long-term player development instead of like trying to play for the tournament next week.
Yeah. That's so important. Like how important, clearly you've pointed that out, but like the parents and like their mentality of, and then trust in you and that mentality of the long-term plan has got to be crucial, right? We've seen the opposite. And we all have those. Like, why is she not playing better next week? You know, like, okay, let's cool it and let's look ahead a little bit. Here's where I'm going, and here's what she's going to be.
A lot of times, it's actually, I would say nowadays it's actually. I'm getting less parents. There's definitely the helicopter parents, but I would say it's equally as much on the kids. TikTok generation, these kids, and also if they see the scores, they see what everyone in this area, even just their friends are super good. And it's kind of like, I want to be there tomorrow. And it's like not under, and kids, especially the like middle schoolers, they don't understand that I have like Sam Ha, who's one of the people have seen on my Instagram, like he's now a freshman in high school, he's 14, but he's been like elite level fast since he was 10, like from pretty early on. So his stock swing at 14 years old is 117. He can move it over 120 if he wants to. And he's like 5'7", 5'8". So he's not one of those kids that's like 6'2" at 14. He just moves extremely well and efficiently. Wow. And we have another kid who's like a 7th grader who's like barely 5 foot, is mad that everybody hits it further than him. And it's like, dude, your dad is like jacked and 6'2". Like, it's probably going to be okay long term. Like, we just have to let this play out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough to have that conversation with a kid. You're right. It's like the kids are probably more impatient than the parents nowadays.
Yeah, the dad's completely on board, and it's actually getting the kid to be more patient because he's really good. Like, he just finished, he was 3rd or 4th in the junior Honda, like hitting it way shorter than everybody else. So like, I'll tell him like the big thing with him is skill development. Like, get to where you have all these skills to where the only thing you're lacking is distance. And then when the distance kicks in, you're good, which is what happened with Miles Russell. Miles Russell, even though I've only kind of seen from afar, people, what makes that kid good? Does he hit it like whatever? No, he's undersized, pretty small. That's it. Like, I bet he swings 108. Like, he's not world class fast yet. He probably will be. Mm-hmm. But he would be top 5 in strokes gained on and around the greens since he was like 10. Like his short game is world class at a young age, which is rare, and he hits it pretty straight. And the only ingredient that was missing was he didn't really quite hit it far enough to be elite. He was good, not like elite. So he's really good for his age, but like competing at AJGAs and stuff wasn't really on the table for a while. And then like the moment he could hit it like 275, he went on a run last year where I think he won like 4 out of the 5 AJGAs he played in like a 3-month period.
Oh, is this the kid that,
and then won the junior players and who knows what else.
This is the kid that shot 60 at South Beach? Lefty? No. There was a kid that...
Yes.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I saw him. My son, we actually played right behind him. When I was down there with my son. Now I know who you're talking... Oh, he's tiny.
He looks super young.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and he shot 60 at the South Beach, and he's 14 years old. Like,
unbelievable. I was like, it was playing so hard that day.
Seventh grader is going like... Yeah, our kids are like, I suck. I'm like, well, the frame of reference is a little bit skewed.
Yeah, no kidding. That kid's ridiculous. Yeah, I didn't realize who you were talking about. Now I totally get it. Yeah, I was just like, who is this kid? And one of the parents told me, he's like, yeah, that kid won like 4 or 5 AJGA like invitationals. Like it was like not even close. I'm like, okay. Then we come in and like it wasn't super tough, but it was pretty windy that day. And I was like, I saw 65, but I did not see 60. Like it was, he had a 20-footer for 59. Yeah, I was like, holy shit.
And like I said, is like all the other skills are there. So like, as long as he's hitting it on the planet, like he's going to score. Like his ability, like I would actually argue bad weather probably swings things in his favor. Cause if he does miss greens, he's not sweating it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And like similar, like I have had other people like Caitlin, and I think there's a very different process. So you have some people that they take to the game of golf really quickly, and I think they slack on the technical side because they can let yourself get away with what you can get away with. So because they're so good without having to actually swing it that good, that a lot of people let them get away with that, and eventually it's always going to catch up to you. And you have to really harp on the technical side. And then I think you have the opposite. The kids that, like Sam's a good example, amazing golf swing, hits it great. Scoring leaves a lot to be desired for someone who hits it as good as he's still like whatever, top 100 in his class, but should be more where Miles is, not where he currently is. But it's maturity in like playing golf, and like I just think everybody develops different skill sets at a different rate, and it's kind of helping kids and parents understand that be good at what you're capable of being good at now, and kind of trying to make the weaknesses better. But we have a long runway with the thing you're not good at, and let's own crap out of the things that you are really good at.
So how do you, like, if you had to describe like your framework to train your really good juniors, like what would that look like?
On the mechanical side, it's very individual, one-on-one. So like to me, I'm biased because the type of player I was kind of doing decade stuff before decade exists. Like I was definitely the relatively conservative, hit a ton of fairways, hit a ton of greens. And kind of my attitude was like, Owen Feller could shoot 70 from where you hit it. So like, and I wasn't a great putter. So figuring out how to score even when I couldn't putt was kind of my key to surviving. And for the most part, I think most kids aren't very good putters because they don't find it fun. Like as soon as they learn that that's an important part of the game and they prioritize it, they can get good at it pretty quickly. But like if they're not interested, they're not interested. There's nothing you can say to make them a good putter. And if they don't care about it. And so to me, it's like Sam, it's like, doesn't really care about being a good putter. He wants to hit it like Jesus. And so I go, let's try to get as close to that as possible. And to where, so like what he's done is Sam this year as a freshman was worried about making the high school team, and their high school team should have clearly won states, but didn't. But like he had the third lowest scoring average, I think, in high school golf as a freshman, like under par. And the funny thing is, because he was playing with his friends, he played really well. In like AJGAs and FJTs, his scoring average is not under par. But it's like it's so learned. It's kind of what I've always known, but it's kind of like putting people and kids in situations that give them the highest probability of success. It's like with most of my kids, I try to help set their schedule. It's like, we're going to play golf courses that fit your game. So if you're really long, maybe a little bit crooked, we're going to search out the resort golf course that's might be 7,200 yards where half the field doesn't hit it far enough at your age, but there's a lot of room, big greens, big fairways. Or if you're a kid who hits it down hallways, let's not play that golf. Let's play the tough tree line golf course that everybody else hates, but doesn't bother you. And I think I try to mix. I have a rule where I think it's like a thirds rule. So I think a third of the tournaments you should play should be pretty easy. Like, you're the best player in the field. Like, in those events, you're probably going to win. Like, you'd have to play bad to not win. And I think a third of the tournaments you play, you should be able to win. There's no guarantees. Like, there's probably 10 to 20 kids at similar level. And then I think you should play a 30-year events where you're in over your head and like making match play or making the cut is a win. Like,
Gotcha.
You're just trying to finish in the top 50 percentile. And I think it's kind of like red light, green light, yellow. It's like playing worst ball or best ball. It's like you learn how to win what you should win, but you also learn how to kind of tread water and survive when you're in over your head. And I think too many parents probably do too much of the in over your head. Like, they want to play too many AJGAs and too many events too soon. And they care about ranking and they care about all that stuff. And instead of like understanding that winning is a skill and being comfortable with the lead and being comfortable out in front and having to go to sleep with all the pressure of leading a golf tournament by 3 is very different than shooting a final round 68 to backdoor top 10. Like, you had no pressure. Like, not that it doesn't take skill, but that's way easier to do than sleeping on the lead and then coming out and shooting in the 60s the next day. And I think even if I actually like, this will probably catch me flack, but it's mainly golf instructors, not parents, but probably still some of them. I actually like the changes JGS has done, even though most people complain. It's making strength of tournament, other than the adjustment, which can get a little funny in AJGAs, but it's making it more just straight. Like, if you have a low scoring differential, it doesn't matter what events you're playing. You're going to get like, your ranking is going to be well. So it used to be, if you shot a low round in like a local, like our North Florida Junior, like run by the local PGA, like you played in our local tournament and even if you shot 66, a couple years ago, your ranking would get worse if you were a really good player. Nowadays, they've kind of fixed it, as long as they're playing a reasonably hard golf course, is that it's more just straight course. Like, if you shot under the course rating by a considerable amount, you're good. And I try to argue with parents is the adjustment to AJGAs kind of a rich get richer thing. They're always adjusted up. But I would also say anybody who's played an invitational or a high level AJGA will tell you that golf course is not playing as easy as it's rated. Like, the day it was rated is not set up the same as it is in AJGA. It's harder. Yeah. And there's a reason why when kids play an invitational, the scores are higher than when they play the state golf association stuff. And there has to be a way to reflect that. And I think if you use JGS correctly, you can be one of the top players without playing AJGAs, especially in Florida where we have talent. Yeah. It's helped me get parents to allow their kids to play more of the local stuff or more of the regional stuff, where it was like, as soon as they got to be decent, it was like, we're only playing AJGAs and we're not playing. And then we're also only going to play 5 events a year. We try to like stack the deck to where it's only the biggest events, to where they're trying to game the system to get the ranking as high as humanly possible. And that backfires really bad if one of those 5 events is not good.
Yeah, they don't take into account weather a lot of times too. Like, we just had the Junior Heritage this past weekend and it was blowing 40 and raining, and the kid that won shot +1 and won by 7. Like, in 2 of my kids, I had one kid shot 77, 78. Yeah, exactly. He was from Jacksonville, the kid that won?
Yeah, Phil Dunham won.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what his name was, but yeah, so I'm just saying, like, it was, you look at the scores, like, oh yeah, that's no problem. It was playing really hard.
Yeah, and that happens here. Like, there's the golf course here, anybody that's in Florida has played it. There's a course here called Palatka Golf Club, which is like a 1920s Don Ross. It has never been redone. So original grass, original greens, But now the slopes are even more severe because they've top dressed them, and they are, even though they've never redone them, they're faster than they were when they play tournaments there. They're faster than, and it's this like 5,900 yard golf course that's rated at like a 68. And people think they're going to go in there and just tear it to shreds. And almost any junior event that's there, 1 under is a good score.
Wow. Yeah. Just breaks the system.
Yeah, because they just think, oh, short golf courses, I'm going to score. And it's like they have a green out there that's 14 by 12.
Oh, my God.
And it has a dead hippopotamus in the middle of it. Like, you're good luck.
That's crazy. So what are like some of the things
I think
that you
playing
do?
Some of those events matters.
Well, yeah, for sure. But yeah, there's some like that, like Camden Country Club in South Carolina is kind of like that too. It's like the hardest 6,500 yard course you ever see. And it's like Donald Ross, same deal. It's never super low. How do you put pressure on your kids? Like, what are some of the games that you play, whether it's on course, or how do you simulate pressure?
A lot of it is the beauty of kind of our program, and I get a lot of one-on-one time. And then when we play, we kind of group kids together. So I usually use themselves or each other, because everybody had the kid that like you can't stand losing to. And if you can't stand losing to a kid, he's going to be in your cart. You're going to be paired with him, and you're going to have to play against him today. And like, if you let me know someone bothers you, like, you're definitely, that's going to be your playing partner for the next 6 months. And then they're all good. Like, I would say of the kids that are regularly around, like, other than maybe 1 or 2, like, almost all of them regularly shoot under par. So like, the bar just gets raised. Like, if a kid shows up, everybody else is shooting under par. So their mindset, even if they're a beginner, isn't, and I don't lower the bar for anyone. So when we do a short game competition, like, the kid that's only been playing 6 months is going against the kid that's on a full ride to a top 50 D1 school, because occasionally they'll win. And if they beat the kid that day, that kid's never been happier in his life.
Right.
And it motivates the D1 kid to never let that happen again. So and those kids, no matter what, everybody has weaknesses. So like, I usually actually try to pair it so that maybe a kid that is not as good of a golfer, we're doing a skill contest against someone who's a much better golfer than them. They're actually better in that scenario than the better player is. And it's to motivate both of them, to show the kid that's not as good, hey, like, you have stuff that you're good at, and you just haven't figured out all of the pieces of this puzzle, but like, there's pieces of the puzzle on the table. Like, you've got part of it figured out, and that this is attainable. And then usually I like humbling the kids that think they're really good. And so like, if you have a kid that's been playing 6 months and is a 10 handicap and they're a +6 and they lose to them, it's ego boost. Ego breaking. And like, right. I think having an ego is probably the most dangerous thing for junior golfers. So we try to keep, and most of the kids now, because of the scenario, pretty humble. What generally happens is when they go away to college and then they come back, they want to come practice with the high schoolers in the middle. Like, they want to give back. And like, so like, if they're chipping, be a
mentor
contests, they want to be involved and are helping, because they saw what that kind of feeds it. Same thing with tour players.
Cool.
Like, if there's a tour player around, they'll come help them. It's going to create an environment of, yes, I'm going to kick your butt to humble you, but then I'm also going to, like, it's like, how do you play that shot? And what did you do here? And my goal is to kind of create groups that are going to frustrate each other for various reasons. But basically, I want there to be, whether it's just personalities clash and they don't like each other, or they're really good friends, but they want to beat each other. To me, I want there to be a rivalry at kind of all times. Like, my favorite one is that has happened from his kid who asked if I told him I was going to be on a podcast, and he was like, "Are you going to talk about me?" I told him probably not, but I'm going to.
Give him a shout out.
Nolan Harper. He's been a good player for a long time, but very kind of quiet and timid when he first kind of going to the academy. He was probably like 8th grade-ish. Like, yeah, he was pre-high school. And like, he'd take lessons, but when he started actually hanging around the older kids, he was very quiet. And our kids will bust balls. Like, they're not going to hold back. And like, I think he's like jaw hit the floor his first week. And within a month, he might have become the best shit talker out of college. Like, he went from being the kid who was like very beta and timid to a kid who was like walk with some swagger and like, because the difference is most of the kids that were running their mouth weren't as good as this little 7th or 8th grader. And so he got confidence because he's like, you can talk all the shit you want, but I'm better than you. And like, he would do it like subtly. So like, he would hit a chip to like a foot and just turn and stare at them and do like a long stare, like, like, you know that I know that I just whooped your ass. And
I love it.
like, it went from this kid who was really quiet and timid to a kid who was almost like a huge smartass, like instantaneously. And the golf improved massively along the way. Like,
Sure.
he's still a kid who struggles with confidence at times, and I don't think he'll have a problem with me saying that, because the last 2 years he's had an opportunity to win a ton of big events, and I would say hasn't closed the deal. And
What class is
he
he?
knows it. So I'm not 24, so he's a senior.
Okay. So where is he committed?
He was the alternate. Yeah, FGCU. He had a couple offers from decent D1 programs. Played in the last couple US juniors, like I guess both on the number for match play, with like making a 9 on an easy par 5 to miss by 1. Just like, but like he was an alternate for the Junior Jones Cup and then slept on the lead going into the final round. So like he ended up finishing, I think, 3rd or 4th. And I told him, like, if you started the week, I know you're disappointed that you didn't win, but it's like you were an alternate. So the kid who wasn't supposed to be there last minute got in, ended up almost winning.
Yeah.
He had a chance to win with a couple holes left to play. And like, yeah, it's got him into like, he's in the Simplify and then the Western. Like, I mean, he's going to have a fun summer before he starts college golf.
That's great.
But like, he's still fighting through. But I think if he didn't have that experience of like, I at least can gain some confidence, I don't think he gets the lead in the first round. Like, I don't think he can go like show up to an event where he's the worst ranked player probably in the field, and the first day going like, I can win this. Now, 4 holes to play. I don't know what was going through his head or how his head, but he at least ended going into the final round. He thought he could win it.
That's progress. That's a mindset. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I have, the other good example that I can name, Andrew Riley, who same thing came to me really early on, like within under a year of picking up a golf club, was okay. Like a freshman who shot like 41, but like at the time was small, undersized, and good at scoring. Like didn't hit a lot of greens, didn't hit it super far. And the funny thing now, he's like whatever 6'3", 2, is not small anymore. But he's a kid kind of the same way, gradually built up the confidence, had a chance to win a lot, and kind of like Nolan didn't really seal the deal. And so we had a conversation middle of last college season. So he was a kid who had a bunch of D1 offers, had bad grades, had to go to a D2 school for academic reasons. And his first year and a half in D2, he had one of the best scoring averages in the country, but had never won. Like, I think he'd finished top 25 every event he played, most events in the top 10, but no wins. A lot of leads, but like didn't win. And he'll hate this story. On his birthday, he played in one of the biggest events with like all the best D2 teams in the country and had like a 4-shot lead with 5 holes to play and finished 3rd. We had to talk, like, you would have the lead after the first round, then you can have it after the second round. You keep getting better and better, and it falls apart later and later. And like, you can't keep knocking on the door this many times and have it not go through. And 2 events later happened to be NCAA regionals, which he came from like, I think 3 or 4 shots behind to win by 4. 3 or 4, and then he ended up winning NCAA nationals by similar margin. So won regionals and national champion.
Wow. Yeah, there you go.
But same thing, that the arc of like, I don't know if I can win, to like, they would say choking, but like can't close the deal, to then all of a sudden, I can't do that. Like, this is a very doable thing.
What was his feedback on that during that conversation? Like when you were talking to him after he blew that lead, like what was like, was he super emotional, or how was his attitude?
Yes and no, because like I'm pretty involved in my kids' like I'm a person whose cell phone, like, it's gone off like 100 times since I've been sitting here. Like, I'm pretty much involved in like, I welcome the text messages kind of at all hours, even though the wife doesn't always love that.
Same.
But so like it wasn't the first talk we've had like that. So like, it's kind of like, it's the same thing with when no one lost the Jones Cup. It's like, you can be both sad and happy at the same time. You go like, at the beginning of the league, if I told you finished top 5, you'd probably take that. Now, when you have a big lead, you don't want to hear that. Like, you don't want to hear that it's it's the hindsight of going like, you're allowed to have both emotions instead of like, it is okay that you're mad that you're lost. Like, if you weren't mad that you lost, there's a problem.
Yeah, you don't care.
I did a panel with I think Cheryl and Dunnigan. I think, I won't say ruffled feathers, but I think people were surprised by the answer. And they're like, what do you think's the most important trait in a good player? And I said, I've never met a good player that's a good loser. I go like, I don't want kids to like losing. Like, I want it to hurt. And so that's why part of the thing in the actual program, I make them lose because it hurt. Like, it's the biggest, like, I've never seen a kid after a loss, if I'm there to kind of shape the narrative, that doesn't work 10 times harder for the next month after that.
I like that.
And they want
you learn
the
a lot about
redemption.
them.
And so like, to me, it's one of those things to where like, he viewed it as like, I know I'm good. Like, obviously I keep getting these opportunities. So like, it's not that I suck. It's that, and a lot of it's like essentially bad breaks. And I go like, is you recognizing that you got good breaks to be in the lead. Like, they're going to balance out. And the problem is yours happened to come at the time that you absolutely didn't want it. Like, one, he missed the green by like 5 yards, hit a cart path when OB, and ends up costing him a couple. It's like, it really wasn't a bad shot. Like, you didn't really miss it by a ton. I think another tournament, he hit it just over the back of the green and they couldn't find the ball. They landed on the green, and there's palmetto bushes and whatever. But it's like, if you can't actually find it and identify it, like, you have to go replay it. And one of those things to where like, you've also hit a tree and ended up in the middle of the fairway. So like, it's
right. Then he wins.
I think my job is then last summer he played good. Like, he played pretty good at the South Beach. Can't remember what he finished, but I think it was like 10th or somewhere around there. Yeah, played okay, Southern, Western. Like, I mean, he had a pretty good season after winning that. And like, but now that's part of the reason why he had a bunch of offers, because he transferred when he entered the portal, and he chose, I would argue, the lesser offer from either a prestige or a money standpoint with the whole NIL deal. Like, he turned down multiple SEC schools to go to UNF. Part of that's I'm there, and he likes Schroeder. Like, there's a relationship there. But Nick Gabrelchek was really the answer. I don't even know if Nick knows it, but like, the answer of having a chance to be around the kid who's probably the second best player in college golf or third best player in college golf, and then Robbie Higgins, who just won JU's event by, like, there are 2 All-Americans on that team, to go there and, one, not have to be the guy because he was the best player in school history at the previous school he was at, and kind of start that process over again. So having to be third best and fight, and he realized that every time he's backs against the wall, he ends up getting better. So he kind of put himself in the most difficult situation where he was guaranteed playing time, because there was options where he could play where like there's no guarantees, even that like Auburn was an option.
That's probably a good call. I mean, I've gone through that with my son. He did the same thing. Yeah,
I like that I get those. Like, I'm a part of that decision making process, because like, I went to a school where I chose the better school. Part of it was academics, but like, I didn't really play college golf because I chose the school that there was no way I was going to be in the starting 5, but it was because it was the coolest school. Like, it was, I think they had the top recruiting class in the country that year. Like, that was, you don't want to be the worst player as a part of that.
Yeah, it's a hard decision when we're trying to help our kids make that call. Like, you don't want them to go to the best, while we're talking to one of my kids today about one of his friends went to UNC, and like, kids probably doesn't have a chance to play. Like, they're so good. You want to be that last guy on your national championship team.
And like, I use the Alabama reference a lot, is that like, kids are 5-stars, go to Alabama, and they're third on the depth chart, and they could have gone to Kentucky and been All-American and actually have a higher probability of getting drafted. I feel like golf, you don't get better on the bench. And I think it can also ruin a kid's confidence very quickly. I think generally going to a school where you're going to play as a freshman, but you're not going to be the top guy, like, you're almost a lock for the top 5, but not the top spot, is the ideal situation.
Yeah.
Like, the goal is to get to be the number 1, but you're not given it. And I think that was his decision in the recruiting process. Like, there was 2 SEC schools that were basically telling him, like, you're coming here to be the guy. And he's like, I want to be pushed. Like, I don't, but I also don't want to be the 7th man. Like, I would have,
Right.
like, he was like, I want to find, so I would argue he chose the second hardest situation. The one where he knew he was probably going to play. But yeah, and he missed 1 event so far at UNF.
So this would be what?
That was more being used
is
as
this
a teaching
junior
tool.
year? Is that what you said? Like he played 2 years at D2 and then?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's got 2 more years.
Yeah. And
it'd be cool to watch.
The only reason he transferred was because of PGA Tour U.
Right. Have a chance to get in there and get a card.
Yeah, it's such an incentive nowadays.
For sure.
And 2 guys on his team that are near the top of PGA Tour U. So he kind of knew that both those guys are graduating. So like it's 1 year as the number 3 guy, and then when they leave, he's kind of expected to be the guy next year.
Gotcha. You stay eligible, right? Keep the grades up.
His grades have gotten better. He's figured out that like
tutors help.
That's the problem. Is like he's not. Yeah, I mean, he's not Einstein, but he's not the world's dumbest kid either. Like there's an effort element to that as well. He's figured out that it will have to do more than the bare minimum effort-wise to you have to at least try a little bit that part.
For sure. Awesome, man.
I try to push my kids to where like I know what all of their grades are. And if their grades aren't where they're supposed to be, like I'll tell them they can't book a lesson. Or they know they're going to get shit for it 24/7.
So are you communicating with their college coaches? Like how frequent are you talking to some of those? Because I know it goes both ways with mine.
I mean, like at UNF, like I have a bunch of kids that play there, and like I teach his daughter. So like there's kind of a fairly steady stream of communication. I would say a lot of the coaches I'm in contact with, if I have a say in the decision, I generally point them to coaches that I know, like that I would trust sending my own kid to. So I have a pretty good relationship with a handful of coaches across the country that tend to works both ways. I've sent players to them and they'll send players to me, but that I trust fully. Like I know they're going to do right by the kid. Like that's what I care about is I know that they're not going to meddle with their golf swing, and if the kid deserves to play, he's going to play. And it's merit based, and like we're going to push them in the right way. And I think personality matters a lot too. Like there's some kids whose parents are very kind of pushy and tough, and I can send those kids almost anywhere because college is going to be lighter than home was. There's other kids that like if someone pushes them, they will shut down. And like they can't play for a certain type of coach. Try to get around that. Like I try to not have kids that need kids' gloves, but at a certain point, someone is who they are, and like I still think they have to go to some place where they can succeed. And I think this is probably like I think business-wise, this is every bit as much about reading people and personalities than it is about like being the smartest guy in the room is rarely as impactful as people think it is, as far as like who's the best teacher. Like in a golf lesson, you're maybe giving someone 0.5% of what you know. So at the end of the day, it's how well you can communicate and relate to the person standing in front of you matters more. That's why a lot of teachers that guys think don't know a lot and aren't super technical or hyper successful. And some of the guys that think they're brilliant haven't had quite the same success. It's because there's more to it than X's and O's.
Definitely. That's exactly right. So how would you push like a young coach nowadays if somebody, and you probably sure are getting still young, but you got to be getting some questions from coaches that want to get better. Is like, what path do you put them on? What are the things that you would suggest they do?
For me, I would shadow as much as possible. Like, I don't know a single coach, and I'm sure there's some, that would turn somebody down if someone was eager to learn and was going there for the right reasons, saying like, hey man, like, I'd love to come watch you teach for a day or two. And I'm always shocked at how little I'm asked. Like, I mean, it happens, I would say it's a handful of times a year. I don't know how much you're asked, but like it's only a handful of times a year. And
I would expect to be more.
Shocks me. Like the assistant pros of a club that teach never watch me teach.
That's not uncommon. That's what happens at clubs. It's like the ones that are closest to you, like just take for granted.
Yeah, you can never be an expert in your own town. Like that's the. And I think my personality probably doesn't help that from the sense that, like, one, I don't suffer fools, and two, I don't really care about the self promotion. Like, dropped my PGA a long time ago, so like I'm not going to win any awards. I don't really care about any of that, and so like I would guess at least half the PGA members in my chapter, so not even the section, like locally, don't know who I am.
Really? Wow.
But my attitude is like, my job, like, they're not clients. Like, I'm not selling lessons to them, so I don't give a shit. Like, they're not going to, if my lessons book, like, it's the same thing with like the Golf Magazine or Golf Digest stuff or all that other stuff. People are like, oh, those awards mean a lot. But like, one, nobody reads magazines anymore. And two, if your book is full, it's full. Like, it doesn't, you can't fit anymore. And if you're on social media all day, I'm going to question how much time you can actually devote to teaching. Like,
yeah,
people that are campaigning for all those awards, as a general, I'm going to guess, aren't actually giving a lot of golf lessons.
Yep, that's fair, for sure.
And I was always brought up to be like, if you have to tell someone how awesome you are, then you probably aren't that awesome.
I love it, dude. This has been so much fun.
But like,
I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's where, like, I think you are a little different. Like, you have the job. Like, there's a reason I'm not teaching at Sea Island, but I also, like, anybody that knows me, I wear flip flops half the time, and like, I don't look like Sea Island. Like, I have full sleeve. Like, that's not. I would say I don't look like a golf pro. Like, no one would pick me out of a lineup as a golf pro, and I'm kind of completely okay with that. And I actually think the kids like I think I can relate a lot to the kids more so because I don't look like the stuffy, uppity golf.
Right. Yeah, you got the the flat bill and you look like a skater kid still, even at your age, which I think is awesome. That's why I love you so much.
Yeah, and I think like George Gankis, like a lot of the kids relate well to him because he looks like a kid. And I don't mean that as any disrespect. Like,
no, I get it.
Can relate to teenagers, and so like if you look at the bulk of his business, that's kind of what it is. And I think juniors are the most fun to work with because they actually are malleable. They listen as a general rule, not 100%, but they're not a sieve. They're a fence with some leaks, but so some of it sticks, and they also have the time to improve. So like they actually practice. So like even most adults that want to get better, like they don't have the time to improve. And I think teaching tour players is the massively overrated thing because a lot of guys that do that primarily for their primary business, like they didn't develop them. They got them when they were already tour players. And so you're just kind of trying not to screw it up and make it marginally better. But that's nowhere near as fun to me as like kind of frame up restoration where you're building it from the ground up.
You're about to get that with your girl, I think. Right? So a couple more years.
Yeah. Most of the tour players that I work with now, I've taught before they were tour, and they're the most loyal and they're the most, and I've had plenty, I think I've had 9 guys go from Korn Ferry to PGA Tour that all eventually left at a certain point, and I know where I'm at. I have no, if a PGA Tour player calls me, I know that I am the last stop on the train. I know they've exhausted every other resource other than me. So if I get a PGA Tour player, I'm not getting them at their peak of their heights. I'm usually getting them pretty close to rock bottom, which can be fun. I've had guys go from losing their tour card to a lot of success, or guys that were, Julian, for instance, was, I think, 1,500 in the world to top 60 in the world. But yeah. But at the end of the day, those still are, tour players are cool, high stress, highly emotional, and there's good reason. There's a lot of money on the line, but they're not the best students. And if you're not searching for fame and fortune, I think it's still hard to get with them because some of them don't like to pay very much. But I think it's a very overrated thing that I think everybody, when they start to teach, wants to teach tour players. And then a lot of people, when they get there, realize very quickly that it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Amen. You're the man. Tell everybody how they can kind of get a hold of you and follow you on socials and give out your website. You're still selling your short game series, right?
Yeah. I think that's available on the website and through Skillist. I do online lessons on Skillist, and I think all social media is Dan Carraher or some variation of that. there's going to be, if you search it, there's going to be a knife and putter one as well. And that's also me. So feel free to follow those as well, even though it's probably outside of most people's niche interest. Well, the putters probably are within the interest, but
yeah, for sure. Do you have a minute to talk? I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but talk about your putter design and how you kind of got into that.
Yeah, so when I went to college, the plan was to be Buddy Marucci. So the plan was actually like, I didn't think I was going to ever be good enough to really play professional golf, but I saw Buddy when I was in high school, maybe middle, it was high school, play Tiger, and it was like, that guy still competing at a high level as an amateur, like it'd be cool to do. And then my other love was cars and really taking anything apart and putting it back together. And so it was going to be, I was going for a master's in high performance engine design, and then was going to do golf as like hobby. And then I turned pro at 20, left school at 21 thinking I could play professional golf, and went the other way. So I went to golf became the job, and then tinkering then became the hobby. But I learned CAD and all that stuff in college, and actually helped Scratch Golf, which is now National Custom Golf, with their putter line, ill-fated putter line, but lasted for a short period of time. And that's when I got into like the looking at design and kind of carrying. I've always been really picky with equipment, and then figured that someone who's anal when it comes to equipment would probably be pretty good at designing it, and someone who slightly understands the physics involved. And so bought a CNC, who knows how many years ago, and started just playing with making things. And for a while did way more knives than putters, and have now tried to balance those two. The knives definitely make more money, but the putters soft, and I like making pretty much anything.
So cool. Yeah, I saw look at the ones you posted on Instagram. It looks pretty sick.
Yeah, I like to do both. I would say relatively simple but cool looking things, and then there's some putters that I know would not sell well, but I like to push the boundaries of what is possible. Like I have a couple putters that I've done that look relatively traditional, but are like over 30,000 in the MOI standpoint. So like off the charts MOI, but don't look like a spaceship on the end of a stick. But they're not realistic because they're much more difficult to make than a traditional putter. So they would have to be way more costly to both produce and then sell. So they're more so like, kind of like the golf instruction part. When I was coming up, I chose everything based on opportunity and learning experience, not on money. And I always figured if you're good at what you do, money's going to take care of it.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
And to me, the putter thing is like me figuring out ways to do things that, like, my rule of thumb is if I can get Paul Wood or any of the guys at Pig to think it is a decent idea or it's kind of cool, then I'm probably did a decent job. And
yeah,
especially considering the level of equipment that I have is pales in comparison to what they have. But like, yeah, to me, it's the same mindset. It's the hyper competitive, like pushing myself, and I think making things, if you can do it, is extremely rewarding. Like to me, creating a golf swing is the same as creating a putter. That's kind of a one-off thing. Is that you're building something from start to finish that is tangible, but something not many people can do.
So do you have stuff that is actually for sale, or are you just in the early stages?
No, yeah, I sell stuff, usually mostly like custom orders and one-off. And then I have been contact actually at the PGA shows. Can't really talk about any details, but
you told me I won't mention it.
Yeah, golf manufacturing companies might have asked about the potential of my willingness to design some stuff for them.
Cool.
And trying to figure out, obviously that takes time away from the golf instruction. So it's kind of like figuring out what I want to be when I grow up, even though I'm a grown up. The problem with being good at multiple things is that eventually you do have to choose a direction.
Yep. That's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I feel like there's no bad choice there. Like at no point will I ever stop teaching. I love it and care about it, but I might stop taking lessons from the 45-year-old 20 handicap that wants an emergency lesson before the member guests, and might kind of restrict it to current clients only, or new clients if a kid like shows determination and like wants to be good. Basically, teach who I want to teach when I want to teach them, kind of.
Yeah, that's the golf teacher's retirement right there. That's the plan. Teach when you want to teach and who you want to teach, not when you have to teach.
Yeah, and luckily I might have that opportunity at a pre-dinosaur age.
There you go. All right. So you've got to answer one more question before we close. You ready? And you have no idea what I'm going to ask you because you don't listen to the podcast. So if you had to get a message to the world, to billions of people, and put it on a billboard, what would your billboard say and why?
Assume positive intent. I think someone who could be reactionary and emotional, like most people, I think as a general rule, most people mean well, even if things don't turn out that way. And I think everything would work a little bit better if you just assumed that even if somebody messed up, it wasn't out of spite or on purpose, it was an accident. And I think everything would work more cohesively if people could kind of embrace that mentality.
I like it. Appreciate it, my man. I enjoyed this so much. I appreciate your time and keep up the great work, my man. You're awesome.
Glad I could do it.
Absolutely.
You too.
Thanks, buddy. What's up, everybody? Guru back here again with a couple of things before you go. First, big thank you to Dan for coming on the show and sharing his incredible insight and knowledge about golf instruction, juniors and the like. That was a really fun conversation. I know you're all going to be taking some nuggets and becoming better coaches and human beings from that information. Make sure you follow Dan on the gram at Dan Carraher. That's DANCARRAHER. And check out his website at dancarrahergolf.com as well. He's got an awesome short game video on there that you can purchase. Thanks again to our new sponsor, Estruzi. Go download the app and check it out, and make sure that you add the asterisk after your name so we know that you heard it from the show. Appreciate that. You can also follow me and reach me on Twitter or Instagram at Golf Guru TV. Appreciate the follow. If you have any questions or comments, you can email the show at golfgurushow@gmail.com or just hit me up on the DMs. I appreciate all the love and the DMs and text messages. We're trying hard over here, trying to put out some good content. So also, this episode was produced by Joel North. Thank you, Joel, for your continued excellent work. And the music was by Kevin MacLeod and Zach Mullick, aka Cutta Beats. And leave me an iTunes review, like I said before. That'd be awesome. And then go check out my new upgraded website at golfgurushow.com. As I leave you with always, from the infamous Jim Rohn, study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. Thanks for listening. I will talk to you next time.